The Kothel fleet appeared without warning. No diplomatic preamble, no veiled threat, just a shimmering tear in the dark above Fort Arcturus, and then they were there. Sleek, crescent-shaped warships descended with silent arrogance, their hulls gleaming like obsidian knives. Jace Thorne had exactly 13 seconds of warning. The sky cracked in a sheet of white light. The ground trembled, and then the main power grid vanished in a burst of electromagnetic fury. EMP sweep, Jace growled, pressing his back to a ruined comms tower. He shoved a dazed private behind cover as a second blast tore through the sky, shredding aerial drones like paper. Screams followed, then static, then silence. They had expected an orbital scan or maybe a warning broadcast. Instead, Fort Arcturus, a colony meant for peaceful research and outer rim trade, was already rubble. Buildings burned. Civilians ran without direction. Defense turrets, blind and dumb, spun in panic before shorting out. In the chaos, Jace's boots pounded ash and metal. He'd fought off-world before, on Farron's Belt, where half his unit bled out under alien steel. But this was something worse. Clean, surgical destruction. Precise. Performed like a ritual. He ducked under the collapsed wing of a scout skiff and dragged a wounded Marine free. Her arm hung useless. Her breathing shallow. "Where's command?" she rasped. "There is no command," Jace said. "Just us." Above, the Kothel ships floated like silent priests at a funeral. No noise. No fury. Just inevitability. One of their vessels broke formation, lowered itself to the surface. Unlike human ships, it didn't land. It descended, slow and smooth, until its legs kissed the earth. Then the doors opened. The Kothel stepped out. Tall. Slender. Skin like brushed steel. Armor that shimmered with moving glyph. Each held a blade longer than a man's arm, sheathed in psionic energy. No words. No hesitation. Just a collective pause, then movement. Their soldiers moved like dancers. Fluid. Perfect. Efficient. Jace had seen this before. At Farron. He'd watched them cut through Earth's best trained like harvesters through wheat. Precision warfare. Predictable. Beautiful. Lethal. But here, something was off. The Kothel hadn't expected him to be here. He tapped his wrist. Nothing. EMP had fried local comms. He slid behind a half-crushed transport truck, pulled a rusted assault rifle from a supply crate and scanned the field. They were sweeping the outer zones. Killing survivors. Not taking prisoners. Not even searching for resistance. They thought it was already over. He moved. Quiet. Fast. He ducked into a shattered med center, rigged 2 oxygen tanks with an ignition trigger, and slipped out the back. 10 seconds later, a squad of Kothel stepped through the door. The lead one paused, head tilting, curious. Then the room erupted in fire. Jace didn't watch. He didn't cheer. He kept moving. He found 2 more survivors holed up in a storm shelter. One was shaking. The other had a broken leg and a makeshift splint. "You military?" the shaking one asked. "Special response." "Doesn't matter now," Jace said. "You either want to live or you don't. Which is it?" They nodded. That was enough. By nightfall, he'd gathered 11 people, Marines, techs, a former farmer who carried a shotgun like it owed him money. They were dirty, scared, uncoordinated. But they were alive. And Jace had a plan. They gathered in the ruins of a hangar, lit only by chemical lamps. Jace knelt in the dirt and scratched a rough map with a broken knife. Here's where they landed. They're fanning out. Straight line patterns. No deviation. Efficient but predictable. "Why?" asked one of the techs. "Why not finish us off?" "Because they think they already won," Jace said. "They think we'll break. Surrender. That we don't know how to fight back without orders and infrastructure." "Do we?" Jace looked up. His face was marked with soot and blood. Eyes sharp. "Humans don't fight by rules. We never have." There was a long pause. A crackling ember snapped in the fire. "We'll use their order against them," he continued. "Unpredictable strikes. Guerrilla traps. Random sabotage. Anything they can't program a response to. Suicide missions, one muttered. Maybe. But if we do nothing, we die anyway. And I'm not going to die like this. Not again. He stood, slung the rifle over his shoulder. Make no mistake, they're faster, smarter, and more advanced than we are. But they've never fought us like this. Not on our terms. No one spoke. Then the farmer stood, shouldering his shotgun. Then let's show 'em what humans look like when we're cornered. Jace allowed himself a grim smile. Outside, the wind howled across the plains. Ash fell like snow. In the sky, the Kothel fleet watched like silent judges. Jace looked up once, whispered to the stars. You've made your first mistake, he said. You thought we'd play by your rules. The first trap went off just before dawn. A Kothel scout patrol, 6 elite soldiers, moved in flawless formation through a ravine north of the colony. Their stride was silent, their senses augmented by psionic pulses that mapped motion, heartbeats, even temperature fluctuations. But none of that mattered when a crude pressure plate triggered a cascade of falling debris laced with magnesium flares. The rockslide blinded them. The flares ignited their rebreathers. 3 died instantly. The remaining 3 scrambled back, trying to call for support. The comms channel crackled. Then howled with a looped human voice screaming nonsense, pitch shifted and distorted. They ran. But behind them, a burst charge exploded from the ground, sending shrapnel through 2 of them. The last one fled, bleeding, confused. He didn't get far. Jace crouched behind a twisted hull section as the sun crept over the ruins of Fort Arcturus. His eyes never left the horizon. Confirmation? Asked Greaves, the former Tecturn demolitions man beside him. Limping, Jace said. But running. Greaves smirked. Good. Let him. They let the wounded Kothal escape, on purpose. Not out of mercy but calculation. A bleeding messenger seated with terror was more useful than a corpse. Back inside the underground shelter, Jace paced before a makeshift map carved into a cracked wall. Nails and wire marked Kothal movements. Bottle caps represented human strikes. The board looked chaotic by design. Their movements are pure geometry, Jace said to the dozen survivors gathered around. Straight sweeps. No lateral deviation. No improvisation. They're built for control. They expect order. They're soldiers, muttered Rain, the ex-miner with a scattergun. Not thinkers. They're artists, Jace corrected. They don't adapt because they think we're beneath them. And that's what we use. He tapped a cluster of bottle caps on the eastern sector. This is next. We'll hit their supply line, power cells, psionic amplifiers. Then we scramble their scanners, force them to deploy ground units for a sweep. What then? Someone asked. Then we hit the sweep. From underground. And we vanish. That night, Jace moved through the sewers with 6 others. They wore patchwork armor, night vision goggles scavenged from wrecked drones, and boots wrapped in thermal suppressing tape. Greaves had rigged the tunnel entrance with a rotating heat emitter, a stolen Kothal device now calibrated to simulate dozens of human signatures. Above ground, the aliens would detect a swarm, where there was nothing but pipes and rats. Jace's group emerged beneath the Kothal power station. 2 guards stood at the perimeter, watching the blackened skyline. They didn't speak. Kothal rarely did on duty. Jace signaled. Rain slipped behind them and fired, point blank. No honor. Just execution. They moved quickly. Greaves planted shaped charges. The others rigged magnetic spikes to overload the energy cores. Jace took the amplifier crystal, about the size of a child's skull, and crushed it under his boot. As the building lit up in pale flames behind them, Jace whispered, "This is how we fight." Back at Kothal Command, Varanketh stared at the tactical display. "What is this?" he hissed. "They attack and vanish. They corrupt our scanners. They pollute the structure of war." His lieutenant bowed deeply. "They weaponize chaos, Fleet Master. They do not engage with intent, only disruption." "Disruption," Varenketh repeated, his mouth curling. This is not war. This is pestilence. He stepped forward, studying the pattern. No symmetry. No logic. Just scattered flashes of aggression and collapse. His warriors were shaken, untrained for unpredictability. Deploy psionic netting. Bring in Cas-3s for cerebral cleansing. We will purge this infection. Jace watched the sky flicker as the Cathal began laying down psionic fields. Beautiful arcs of light shimmered over the city ruins like auroras, an alien net tightening. We're out of time, he muttered. What do those fields do? Asked Greaves. Cognitive disruption. Induces panic, hallucinations. They think fear is a tool. That it'll break us. Will it? Jace gave him a look. You ever seen someone fight while hallucinating? Sometimes it helps. They set up the next strike deeper in Cathal territory, a repurposed hydro-treatment plant converted into a nerve center. Jace infiltrated alone. Through a series of back vents, he slid into the central tower. It was quiet. Too quiet. He placed 2 charge packs, slipped a viral data spike into the Cathal terminal, and turned. A Cathal warrior stood waiting, sword drawn. They stared at each other for a second. Then the alien lunged. Jace ducked, slid under the swing, and brought his knife up into its ribcage. It howled, not in pain but in confusion. Jace whispered into its ear, "Not everything we do makes sense. That's the point." He detonated the tower on his way out. By the end of the week, 12 Cathal squads had gone missing. Their elegant warship now hovered lower, more erratic in its surveillance patterns. Jace's interference had corrupted their data integrity. But the cost was growing. 2 of his own were gone, Rain included. Crushed under a Cathal energy pylon after delaying the enemy's advance. The group was thinner now. Worn. In the shelter, Jace stared at the scorched names written on the wall. Farron. Rain. Colburn. You okay? Greaves asked. No, Jace said. But we're still alive. And they don't know why. Later that night, Jace broadcast a signal on the Cathal emergency channel. Short. Brutal. You fight for ritual. We fight for survival. You bring rules. We bring war. It played on a loop until the Cathal jammed the frequency. Too late. The message had already spread across their fleet. Morale fractured. Fear entered their perfect ranks. Jace leaned back, voice hoarse. They'll start making mistakes now. Rain fell like ash. Thick. Slow. The kind that clung to skin and armor. Jace Thorne stood just outside the Cathal perimeter, cloaked in a stolen recon shroud that distorted his outline into a flickering blur. Behind him, 3 others crouched in silence, Greaves, Vasquez, and Lorne. This was it. Cathal Command had relocated to their flagship, a Leviathan-shaped vessel hovering just above the colony ruins. Its lower fuselage anchored into the earth like roots, feeding on stolen power grid. We breach through the coolant shaft, Jace said quietly. 70 seconds to get in before the vents cycle and boil us alive. After that? Greaves asked. We climb. Vasquez nodded. Any chance of backup? Jace didn't answer. They all knew the truth. He gave the signal. They ran. The shaft was narrow and slick. Toxic mist rolled through the grates, and every breath tasted of metal and ozone. Jace led, counting the seconds. When the vents screamed to life behind them, they were already gone, inside the guts of the enemy ship. Cathal architecture was sterile. Smooth corridors, pulsing with ambient psionic energy. No sharp corners. No shadows. Built for warriors with nothing to fear. That made it easier to move unseen. They climbed 4 decks, disabling sensors with scavenged disruptors. The stolen shroud flickered, almost dead. Jace ripped it off, let it fall. From here on, he said, they see us. They entered a narrow corridor flanked with control pylons. Soft hums filled the air. It wasn't until Lorne stepped forward that the trap snapped shut. A psychic spike burst from the floor, slicing through her chest like light through glass. She dropped. No scream. Keep moving. Jace shouted, dragging Vasquez past the kill zone. They kicked through a panel and fell into a maintenance shaft, tumbling onto a platform just above the core command nexus. Through the grate below, they saw him. Varanketh. The fleet master stood tall in ceremonial armor, flanked by 6 guards. His fingers wove complex patterns through a floating map, erratic red pulses blinking across the colony. He looked tired. Jace dropped through the grate. No sound. Just the clang of boots hitting the polished floor. The Kothel turned. His guards drew blades crackling with psionic energy. Jace raised his rifle and opened fire. 3 shots, 3 guards down. Vasquez dropped behind a pillar and laid suppressing fire. Greaves rolled a fragmentation disk under the map display. Then it was just Jace and Varanketh. Your death will not redeem chaos, the Kothel said. Good, Jace replied, circling him. I'm not here for redemption. Varanketh struck first. His blade arced with violet light, fast and fluid. Jace blocked with a scavenged shield, stumbled back as sparks flew. You fight like animals, the alien spat. We are animals, Jace said, parrying. That's why we win. The two clashed again, steel and energy, precision versus instinct. Jace moved like a man with nothing left to lose. Every blow he dodged cost him breath. Every counterstrike aimed to end it. You defy structure, purpose, harmony, Varanketh hissed. Structure gets you killed, Jace said. Ask your men. With a sudden feint, Jace kicked the floor panel behind the fleetmaster. It shifted. Beneath it, an armed charge blinking. Varanketh froze. Realization dawned. You would destroy us both? Jace's voice was steady. Humans don't die quietly. He hit the trigger. The explosion tore through the ship's lower core. Fire and smoke licked upward, breaking containment seals. The command chamber split open, exposing the deck to the sky. Jace lay bleeding beside a fractured bulkhead. His ears rang. His left leg didn't move. But Varanketh was gone, his body torn in half by the blast. Above, Kothel systems flickered. The ship trembled. Greaves stumbled toward him. Jace, can you move? Jace blinked. Wasn't part of the plan. Whole damn thing wasn't part of the plan. Good. They limped toward the breach as alarms screamed. A dropship, looted from a Kothel storage bay, hovered in the mist beyond. Vasquez was inside, waving them in. As they lifted off, the flagship burned below, once a symbol of Kothel dominance, now reduced to smoke and glowing wreckage. Fort Arcturus was gone. What remained was soot, broken walls, and silence. Jace sat against a scorched wall near the old command center. He stared at a piece of bent steel where someone had scratched in names. Too many. All lost. Rain. Lorne. Colburn. Dozens more. Greaves approached, handed him a flask. What now? He asked. Jace looked at the sky, clear now, no ships above. The Kothel had retreated. Whether in shame or reassessment didn't matter. Now we rebuild. Then we remind them. Remind them of what? Jace stood, slow but steady. That humans don't bow. We don't break. And when the galaxy forgets that. He paused. Smiled faintly. We remind them with fire. A week later, a transmission echoed across Kothel space. Untraceable. In human dialect. You thought we were savages. Undisciplined. Unworthy of war. You thought wrong. Next time you come, bring gods. Because we're done kneeling.